Hey friends, this is Chris Jansen. Evil is the destruction of freedom. Welcome to the End Evil podcast. Just wanted to draw your attention to a couple great things you can check out when you're done watching this show. Pop on over to Twitch and check out Brandon Spencer's 24-hour, 24/7 live stream coming at you with truth, freedom, natural law all the time, every day. Also want to bring your attention Mondays. You can check out my good friend Crypt Rick on Revolution Radio at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. And now, I have a great show for you. Thanks for joining me. Please stop on by to endevil.life and make a small donation or share something from the website. Subscribe to the channels and enjoy the show. Check out the chemtrails. Oh, shit.
I'm in a cage. I'm in a prison. I'm in a mental prison, and a physical one at that, and definitely a spiritual one, whether that's recognized at a conscious level or not.
As I wake from my sleep, the situation's got me thinking deep. Will ever the same? And all life is an extinction. Evil creeps in your dreams. Secret teams throwing memes. And the filling in the in-betweens. Mind control for the teens. Now they got you on your knees. I'm making my way through this open maze, but I'm dazed by mass confusion. All the images that they're using.
There's the rest race to the tip of the top of the pyramid. The pyramid.
Up our free will, calling in, to this low level of spiritual awareness, such that these methods can have any effect over us.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the End Evil podcast. This is Chris Jansen, and evil is the destruction of freedom. Recently, we've been having some conversations about the power of words, about clarity, meanings, definitions, and I decided when thinking about it that a good next step would be to move on to the next level of communication. And I do think that communication is key in these times we're in, because how are we going to change things if we can't communicate with one another? And how are we going to work towards a better future if we're confused about what's going on right now, for instance? One of my favorite symbols is right behind me. You see the tree of life. And to me, the tree of life represents interconnectedness. And interconnectedness is a reality of life on this planet. And it has so much to do with humans and humanity and the fact that we are all connected. And everything we do affects one another, and it affects all of life around us. And that's why it's such a crucial time for us to recognize our importance here as humans and our ability to connect with each other and with nature, and our ability to change things. And everything we do and think and say in this world reverberates out, and it affects other things. And on that note, we begin to recognize that all the shapes and symbols around us also affect us, and they affect the way we think. And when we have these belief systems, as we've also discussed in recent weeks, when we discussed misaligned worldviews and realigned belief systems and worldviews, we came to the understanding that these worldviews and these words we use can combine to create some very dangerous situations for all human beings. And that's what we're experiencing. So in order to decipher all this mess, we need to start understanding symbols. This is the next level. I see symbols as like a painting, they say, is worth a picture's worth 1,000 words, and paintings are one of the most valuable things you can buy on this planet in a way. Uh, I think symbols are like words times 100 or times 1,000. You can pack hundreds and thousands of words into little symbols that mean so much and affect us so much. And so that's about all I want to say for the time being, because I have some other wonderful guests here tonight to help me with this topic, because this is a complicated topic. It's a deep topic, and I wanted to bring in some expert friends to help decipher and unravel this topic. So I have with me today a couple of my wonderful warrior friends. Um, One Great Work Warriors. Oops, sorry about that. Hey, we're gonna play that at the end. That's something cool I was saving. I'm trying to learn to work all the new gadgets here on Restream.
Check, check.
Look at, we got Nate Cap here, one of my awesome people, most awesome people out there on Symbols. And your voice is coming in, Nate. Sorry we didn't have a chance to check ahead of time. I heard you for a second there, but maybe I'll just introduce real quickly. I was just recently reviewing an amazing presentation called Earth Brain 2 by Nate Cap, and you can find that on his cubbyhole.com, and talk about symbology. He
Yeah, but I
helped
can't
us.
hear you.
Oh shoot! Oh, you're coming in. We hear you so far. So just let us know when you get that worked out, Nate. In the meantime, I'll stop blabbing, and I'll pass off the mic to Will, because I know you are an expert on symbols and symbology, and I'd love to hear your introduction, and maybe you can help us out with some grammar.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having us on, Chris. It's a pleasure. And thanks for the kind unseen and seen realm. And this is a fantastic category that we can kind of be proud of as human beings, because this kind of separates us from any other species. We have this capability to create symbols, to use symbols, articulate and reason symbols. And it's extremely empowering, but also extremely controlling and influential in our current human condition, one of control, duress, and slavery. Symbolism is absolutely used on the front lines to influence, control the majority of people, the masses. So symbolism has been a front runner in any ancient culture, our current modern culture, and so it's this continuation and of diving into what does these symbols mean. And I think a good introduction would be, what is a symbol, right? A symbol is a man-made representation of something in objective reality. It could also be interpreted subjectively as well. So you can almost look at a symbol. A symbol could be extremely neutral, and it can be relative on its meaning, but yet it can correlate with objectivity in nature. So by human beings using logic and reason, we are able to look at the natural world and see these certain type of characteristics and develop a imitation of a symbol that represents an aspect of nature, and that can have profound meaning within that symbol. It all depends on if one has the eyes to see and understand those characteristics and the language of symbolism of the characteristics and attributes to decode that language and understand it.
Thanks for that intro, Will. Um, I was thinking to myself about the symbol. Um, the sound of a symbol is like, sound is like one of the first things there is sound. And I think of like a circle is one of the most whole basic things. A one is whole, right? And it's also the circle is a whole, and we live in this place where things look like circles in the sky, and there's circles all around us, water drops. Um, so there's reverberations of symbology through everything, and there's this correspondence through everything. And I just wanted to say, when I was very young, I had this realization that everything is like a symbol for everything else. And it's really exciting when you start to recognize this quality of life, that everything is a reflection of everything else. Brandon, would you like to say something about symbolism and help us get started?
Yes, thank you for um, asking me to join you on this wonderful show. Will made such a great point, and shout out to Sarah Cross from rocking one of her shirts that has one of the symbols and sigils that she created. It it resonated with me so much. So yeah, like Will said, symbol or symbolism is ancient. It is used as a means of communication. It is how we encrypted meaning and ideas of things in objective reality and certain aspects of ourselves. And it is sadly misunderstood a lot. But symbolism in itself, you can say that it is a mark or item that is meant to infer something, so that way we can come to a better logical, conscious realization of aspects of reality, aspects of ourselves, and other things that exist. And it's up to us to decode, the connection with the symbol and our consciousness. And that's really what I've always, understood symbolism to be. It has a relative meaning and it also has an objective meaning. It isn't necessarily so unidimensional because we can infer or put meanings onto a symbol ourselves, and these symbols can also represent many other things as far as in certain groups or certain have certain areas. But it's up to the individual to learn to properly decode what these symbols are. And I'm very interested. I'm very interested to hear what Nate Cap and Logan I had to say about it because I know they've been talking about this subject for many years and have done many presentations, uh, about the subject. So yeah, I'm gonna practice the art I've always talking about called "shut the fuck up," and I'm just gonna listen. So
Yeah, there's nothing to symbolism. The end. Um, Thank you for having me on, Chris. Glad to see you guys. This is way bigger than I thought it was going to be, and that's awesome. Um, yeah, sorry for getting on here and being so discombobulated. I had to get everything situated, and always have to deal with the tech gremlins. Um,
No problem, Nate. That's part of the game, man.
yeah, always. Yeah, I'm not sure what you guys have already said, so wasn't
Well,
able
I'd
to
say
hear
we're
you.
still kind of on the grammar stage here, trying to sort of help the audience just kind of like define the ground level. What are we talking about? What is symbolism? Why is it important to talk about?
Well, symbolism is very, the way that I would say it is. Sub Logan.
Trying to
Um,
get my camera to focus.
Symbolism is, I like to say that it's symbol is very simple, yet it's very complex because what you have to understand is that if you want to understand a symbol, you have to bring knowledge to that symbol. So that means that if you want to understand a square, well, you have to bring math to a square, right? You have to bring the understanding that if you can count to four, well, a square has four sides, right? So the complexity, though, so that's the more simple way. But the complexity is, you know, what has four sides that is, very complex. Like if you look at the 4 seasons of the year, if you bring all the knowledge of the 4 different seasons to the square, well, you're going to get a lot more knowledge or a lot more information, a lot more value from the symbol of the square, especially if you were to dissect that square into 4 parts, right? Um, and one of the things, because a lot of people say that there is no such thing as any power to symbolism, or symbols are just what you make it to be. But it is there's so much more to it than that, and a lot of people just the ignorance keeps them from going further into really understanding how it works, because it's not a supernatural thing. It is a thing where you're bringing information, you're bringing knowledge in order to compare and contrast symbols. You're trying to figure out what is associated with a symbol. I think association is probably the most important word that you would want to bring up when trying to describe what a symbol is, because if you have association with the symbol, then you can begin to understand how to compare and contrast with other symbols. I think I've said this before with Logan, is that we're always using symbols. We're always when we're speaking, we're using bundles of symbols. We're using words, and symbols are principles. And so what you're trying to do is you're strengthening the principle, you're strengthening the symbol. So when you're using the symbol, when you're using bundles of symbols as a form of communication, you're staying true to those symbols. You're staying true to the sound of those symbols, so you can convey messages more clearer, or ideas more clearer. So you're trying to, that this is why I really like that, Chris, you have with the One Great Work Warriors. I really like what you've done with bringing the clarity of meaning of words, and definitions. And it's just so important that we understand that we're using symbols every time that we're communicating words. And so if people can understand that, if people can uh, they can, I think that they can, what's the word I'm looking for? They can associate themselves a little clearer when, or what is the word? Basically, they can see what you're saying a lot clearer when you, or what you're conveying, when you're trying to explain that symbols are in the words that you're using. So that means that they too are using the symbols. So the clearer that we are in the fact that we're using symbols in words, this can really, to me, be the breakthrough that can really help people understand symbolism. I'm not explaining that as clear as I want to, but I think you guys get the point. I know I don't want to take up the whole airways.
Well, we were happy to hear as much as you could say, because we kind of, a lot of us look at you, Nate, as like the symbol guy, like, and it's funny too, because you are a guy who does caricatures, which are kind of like symbolic representations of people with their personality, which is really fitting. Fitting seems like a appropriate word too. But Logan, you got your audio working there? You want to
Yeah,
talk?
can you guys hear me?
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent.
Pretty focused now, huh?
Yeah, I'm trying to let my inner Virgo chill out because it's not quite right, but it's good enough, right? Good
We're all
enough.
dealing with the little gremlins tonight. Right when the show started, my whole computer went crazy. So if I seemed a little lost, I was dealing with something too. But on
Yeah,
with the show. Thanks, Logan, for really appreciate you coming. Talk about another expert on this topic.
I appreciate that, and thanks, Chris, for having me, and to all you wonderful gentlemen here on the panel and everyone watching in. I appreciate you all being here. So, what I wanted to share on this opening kind of segment is, to me, symbolism is so closely linked, um, what's the word, inextricably linked to the fundamental basis of all spirituality, which, from my view, is animism, which is at its simplest form direct interface with, there goes the camera, it's better now. It's direct interface and experience with nature or the natural or external world. And that was happening before spoken language. So everything was symbolic even before we started scrawling on stones and trying to make our own representations of them. The original symbols come directly from nature. It's simply the process of observing and recognizing patterns and associations, or dare I say, correspondences in nature in a nonverbal way, as these archetypes that are absolutely loaded with information, with knowledge and wisdom that nature is trying to show us without speaking, without being able to speak. And so it is our job to have our pagan brains online, as I like to say, our allegorical minds active and always searching for those patterns and putting those pieces together, because that's how you build the foundational building blocks of a principled framework with which to navigate reality. So I think that's why this is the, ultimate topic, because this is the base layer where all spirituality, getting into the more complex forms, this is where it starts, because this is literally where it started historically, the beginning of time. Man just totally in a wild environment and trying to make sense of everything, you know, uh, and starting with those foundational levels, that over hundreds of thousands of years becomes basically the advanced mystery traditions that we have today.
Yeah, I was imagining the, first humans. I mean, I don't know how it actually went down. I don't necessarily buy just the caveman story, but at first someone had to utter some word, and that might have been ugh, right? And ugh might have meant watch out or rock, but it had to start with something, and that first something was a symbol to represent the thing itself,
Mm-hmm.
ugh, watch out for the rock, and it made sense when the person got hit by the rock. Oh
I'm
yeah,
kind of thinking
ugh
of
means watch out.
have you ever seen the movie Stargate? And
Oh yeah.
Yep.
there's the scene where he's trying to so he just walked into this old tomb full of hieroglyphics, and he's trying to ask this woman that ends up being his wife later, about these symbols. And he's like, well, what this? And there's a language barrier. He's trying to talk to her, and she's like, I don't understand. And then he starts drawing in the dirt, and then she gets really scared and covers it up, because why? Symbolism and writing is forbidden. Now why would they want a slave class not being able to communicate in symbols and writing?
No graven images.
Right, exactly.
Oh, we're gonna have to
Great
get
movie, by the way. Yeah,
more
great
into
movie.
that, because
Well
I've been
said.
thinking about the Tower of Babel recently too. But
Yeah.
before we get too deep in, Jerry or Derek, did either of you want to comment on what's been said before, or kind of the base beginning here of defining symbolism?
Yeah, sure. Because sorry, Jerry, unless you got something hot off the stove. But hey, gentlemen, how's it going? Everyone listening? Fred, Marvin, Sarah, Leslie, what's good, y'all? Chris Nelson, yo, you should be up in here. Gotta love and appreciate his work, and the circling the square and all that proper care. But Logan, what you mentioned, yeah, like nature is corresponding to us. Like we're in correspondence right now. It's kind of like communication. And Michael Tsarian had I was watching a little bit of that to kind of freshen up for this one. The subversiveness of symbols. I think it was in the Conspiracy Con, like 2003, something like that. Subversive use of symbols. Yeah, that's the one. And yeah, he mentioned, and I quote, the universe is speaking to us through symbols. It's not through words really. Even though a lot of us, we can say that in the beginning there was the word or whatever, right? But that could be symbolic of you know logos or the breath of life, if you will, or things of that nature. So all those religious semantics aside, yeah, symbols are very, very, very powerful, and I think it's really important to have this type of discussion and keep it fresh in the minds for people because they're we're inundated by this on a daily basis, whether it be for the good or the more subversive ways of this thing, and throughout the history of mankind, yeah, symbols have been used as talismans, all types of tattoos. I mean, think about all the art and symbols in the tarot, alchemy, runes, astrology. Chris, you mentioned, there's like circles in the sky in the beginning, and I was thinking about that one song, and was that symbolic of something when they were talking about the wheels in the sky keep on turning? You know that one? It took me a long time. Like, what are they talking about? Like, they're talking about the sun and the moon, or like the astrological wheels within wheels, that kind of stuff. So there's a multitude of layers that we can unpack with certain things that are being said or displayed or portrayed or conveyed and all these things. And it's just really great to have a deeper appreciation for these things, but also catch the manipulative sides of them as well and kind of recognize, oh, they're throwing out that symbol, so we know who they're affiliated with, that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, we can see all types of symbols being splattered on money, all the crests and family badges and shields, and within a lot of things are tied into numerology, geomancy, on a more macro cosmic level. And of course, yeah, like what is our alphabet built upon? I think Brandon, you mentioned that in our One Great Work Warriors chat to a degree. And just think about the word today, like just break it down. Alpha, bet, alpha, beta. I gotta research that later, but anyways, so yeah, we gotta really take in mind, a lot of these inversions and perversions because, like, wow, like people are drawing lines since, the days of the caveman. What does it all mean? And who is putting whatever meanings and intentions behind certain things, right? And of course, with the inversions and perversions of them, think of the classic, satanic, pentacle and how they like to have that. Which, by the way, is that still below the elephant in the Republican Party? Those inverted stars. I don't know if it's like that with the donkey, but anyways. Jerry, what's good, man? I know you're in Mexico with the serpent and the snake. Man, what's good?
What's up? I don't know if about the star underneath the Republican Party you said. Anyways, thanks for inviting me, Chris. I'm very appreciative to be here. Like Brandon, I'm just gonna shut the fuck up and listen because I'm not strong in this area, but I've been enjoying everything everyone said so far, and although there's some tech gremlins, we're communicating with each other, teaching each other this through the internet. So I'm appreciative. I'll pass it to you, Chris.
Thanks, Jerry. Thanks for coming. Love your support. So, one thing I came across, and I was doing a little research ahead of time, and I came across the word monad, and I was thinking about, this is basically a word that describes elementary, simplest unit. And the circle with the dot in the middle is something that you talked a lot about, Nate, in your presentation, the spire. Um, and that was very interesting too. And I think that part of our existence here is raising our consciousness. It's obvious that there's the material world, but there's all through history, all this lore and a lot of this symbology. The symbology that we're especially interested, that we call occult symbology because it's been hidden or it shows some hidden meaning, is the most interesting, and it always points to the mysteries of life, and there's so many mysteries. And symbology, I think, the one thing that really occurred to me today too when reflecting on this, besides the idea of the monad, the one thing was that we represent our, symbols are representing something, representing, to show something again. And when we show something again in a different way, it allows us to review it, look at it in a different way. Words that we try to be clear with, we try to be succinct, we can use them technically. Symbols require a little bit more of a feminine, intuitive, putting things together, being able to transcend levels and compare things that aren't always necessarily obviously alike in the
The
material
right
world.
brain.
Right. So yeah, on that, I'll pass it on. Let's get a little deeper into the symbol thing. And if you want to jump in, Logan, go ahead. Otherwise, I was going to go to Will next.
I'll wait my turn. Will, you got it.
Cool. Yeah, you guys have all said some really great stuff. I want to dive into what his symbols do to a human being. Like, how are they being used? A good quote by the occultist Diane Fortune said, "Symbols are to the mind what tools are to the hand. It's an extended application of its power." So, symbols, they have an emotional resonance. They are able to subvertly convey a message that has influence, right? It's symbols are primitive. They speak to the limbic brain as well as the conscious mind. So the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, they do both at the same time. It all depends if one has the awareness to use reason and decode the symbol itself. If not, it still resonates in the unconscious and subconscious mind. This is why companies and advertisers and the social engineers, they spend thousands and millions of dollars on branding that has powerful symbolism in there, because it has that emotional resonance, it has that frequency, it has a meaning that inherently we can pick up, and that speaks to the primitive side of our mind. So you can influence someone's behavior, right? So I think that's important to know. There's that obfuscation when it comes into symbols, the inversion of taking an ancient symbol and then promoting its meaning to be the inversion of what it actually is. And this has extremely powerful and emotional dark effects on human beings. And we can get into those symbols later on. But I think if we're talking about higher awareness and evolving in consciousness, symbolism is right there on the forefront. We need to have the awareness. We need to be educated on symbolism and how they are being used against us every single day on social media, in the real world when we're out and about. This is a weapon and a tool. And all through history, like Logan said, this is an ancient, even in language, right? It started with symbols, hieroglyphics, these pictographs. And they're still being used today. So it's a powerful combo. There's a lot to be said. I'll pass it on.
Well, I know we all talk about, how natural law and morality a lot because it's important, but symbolism is possibly the next most important thing as far as what we need to understand to raise our consciousness and evolve our consciousness. And what Logan said was so deep. Like, man, I would like for him to say that again when he talked about, how the universe is always speaking to us and trying to correspond and trying to get us to understand, because it doesn't have a voice for it, itself. So it may come in the form of myth, it may come in the form of association, it may come in the form of patterns. And that's why I was always a fan of the ancient myths, because they had so much rich and vibrant symbolism in it. And it got you to understand things from that kind of right brain perspective, that kind of intuitive, to see like the bigger picture, to get more depth, to get more clarity, to get more meaning, and not just necessarily from a logical means. But with the myths, you could use the imagination to understand these concepts. You can use your imagination to understand what the main message was being conveyed. And that's why we should get back to reading and understand these myths, because they had a lot of rich allegory and symbolism inside of it. And we really do need to become more symbol literate. I know this is what I said in it was last week's episode, but how Michael Tsarion was famous for saying that, how man is always or man is a symbolic creature, and we need to get back to that original form. That's something that NACAP, is always talking about. Like getting back to the purest form, or getting back to the original state, the original form. And that's what we should all be aspiring to, is to get more of an understanding of ourselves and of nature and the objective reality. And with these symbols, we can learn to, compare and contrast, to get a better interpretation, to get a better representation, because we have to keep going deeper and deeper in our understanding of things, and not just settling and say, hey, I've learned this and I'm going to stay there. No, keep going higher, keep going higher, keep going deeper, keep going deeper. There's always more meaning. There's always more definition. There's always more clarity that we can come to learn. And that's what symbolism is there to help us.
Hmm.
And on the deepest level too, something that occurred to me today is like, how do chemicals communicate inside of our body, and what are they? Right? If you were to look really small at a chemical, what is there? There's shapes, right? There's tiny little shapes in there that interact with other shapes. So, at the microscopic, tiniest level, our body and everything in nature is communicating with shapes, not
Through
words.
through forms,
Yeah.
yes.
But man, we got another all-star expertologist on symbology here, Chris Nelson. Thanks so much, Chris, for joining us, and thank you, Brandon, for sharing that link with Chris. I saw him in the audience, and I was trying to find the right window. So thanks for joining us, Chris.
Uh, well, I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Brandon, for sharing that link. Yeah, I was just wondering if it was an open table or what was going on. Um, don't really have much to add. I'm waiting to see like what I can bounce off of people, but just a
Hmm.
quick thing about symbols and their importance is that we talked about it, and it's been mentioned on like the past 3 episodes of Chris Jansen's podcast there every Thursday. That we talk about the importance of symbols, because that's every way we communicate is with symbols. Even if you're a mute or you're deaf, you're going to be using hand gestures, and those are a form of symbol as well, because you're, as Nate mentioned, and Chris, those are shapes and forms. So form is an important part. It's all visual. So I guess if you were blind, you wouldn't be able to use the shape of your hands, but the form of words, when you can read them, and those words are expressed through the form of sound, the vibration. So they all have we don't necessarily think of sound as a form, but it does.
Cymatics.
Yeah, well, I guess if you put like powder or
Hmm.
crystalline or sand or some object that is small enough to respond quickly to vibrations, then you can see certain geometric shapes represented by those forms. And yeah, I've talked about like some people who know my work. I've talked about symbolism, importance of symbolism of causality and consciousness, and different symbolism. And it's very important to understand these shapes and symbols, as Mark Passio's mentioned in his podcast. When you look at the tarot, um, for example, the magician card, yeah, someone could look at it and they see like a guy with his hand raised up, and there's like a sword, and there's like a star on the table, and they don't know what anything represents, because these are all things that have been associated with certain concepts. And if you can understand what these associated concepts are related to certain imagery, the symbols, then you can understand the message that is being conveyed. So again, the letter E, or a cup, all these things, we could say that they're arbitrary in terms of what they mean, but at a certain point, we give them meaning. So whoever is, I guess, the first come, first serve to give something meaning, then they imbue that thing, that form, that shape, or that sound with a certain meaning, and then that meaning is repeated across time. So then there's an agreement upon what that meaning is, and those who can learn what that meaning is and use it themselves, then they can engage in communication. And that, like the tarot or other symbolism, say you have an encrypted language, or something that's encrypted with and you have a cipher. Well, if you know the cipher, you can decrypt the coded messages that are being sent. And I'll just end it there.
Yeah, you made me think of They Live. It's like if you got those glasses, you can decode what's going on all around you. And that is really the bigger picture of the context of why we're talking about this topic, because symbolism and symbols would just be whatever, right? If it wasn't for the fact that it's crucial in the understanding and the context of the world we're living in and what's going on to decipher, because there is something that is to be important, very important things to be ciphered, especially in the things that have been occulted. So yeah, we kind of didn't make this just open invite to the audience this week. This was kind of more of a focused episode. I feel very honored to have Nate and Logan and Will and Chris here, and Brandon, you guys and Derek, that have really um, been out there for a long time doing this work, have been symbols to me of freedom, of justice, of truth. And when I very first got started, and I bumped into Nick Cap's work and Brandon Martin and Logan Hart. These guys were out there representing natural law and truth when I first discovered it, and so they inspired me. Inspire, talk about inspire, right? So that's what we're here to do, all of us, to whoever might be listening at any moment, is to represent truth, to represent freedom, to represent natural law, to explain these things. And so, in order to do that, we have to decipher the symbolism and the belief structures that are keeping people from being able to see these truths, because they're self evident and self discoverable. So, I'll pass it off to Nate. You got anything to add?
Yeah, I appreciate the words, and I also appreciate what you said about me doing caricatures. Um, I actually was thinking about that because that's a good point. I um, as a caricature artist, I have a very exaggerated abstract mind, and I think in form, and so yeah, every single person is a symbol. Every single person is unique, right? And so, in order to, you know, get to know a symbol, like if you wanted to get to know me, you would have to, come to me and get to learn about me or study things about me. And that's the same as a symbol, And it's like, a good symbol is something that um, will, let you know how ignorant you are or how nescient you are. One of the things that when I first got into this type of information, I immediately understood that I was very ignorant. I immediately understood that I was even nescient to a lot of information. And therefore, I realized that because I could admit to that, I started to learn that symbolism is something that like a good symbol is something that will draw you to it. Like for instance, a swastika. A lot of people are really afraid of swastikas, especially Jewish people. Um, but that's because of the negative connotation that's tied to it, right? There's a lot of awful atrocities that are tied to that symbol, and that symbol is, every symbol really. Any good symbol is it's a heritage compartment. So it's a place where it has valuable history to it. But it's not just historical, it's something that is helping us understand our own place in nature, like the swastika. Before the Nazis used the swastika was known as a solar symbol, in the sense that each arm of all four arms of the swastika are going in a direction to represent all the seasons of the year. But also, and the middle, the knot, or the cross in the middle, that would be where the sun is located. Okay. But then, if you just keep doing more research, you'll realize that swastika is also lunar. A lot of people don't know that. But the point is that if we remain ignorant and afraid of that, of any symbol, then we remain ignorant of our own communication with each other. We remain ignorant of our own heritage, of who we really are and why we're here. And that's what they want. That's what these people, these dominators, these controllers of this world, they know how symbols work very well. They are ultimate symbolists. And because they know how symbols work, they know how it works on the subconscious mind. They know how ancient those symbols are and how important they are to us as a sovereign people. And if they can create fear by, dominating people's minds to make them do atrocious things to each other, using those symbols while they do it, then we have this poor resolution association with those symbols. And therefore we, stay extremely separate internally from nature, because these symbols are not just something that is made by man. Man discovered symbols. Man has discovered these beautiful symbols. And the reason that man has discovered these beautiful symbols is because man is trying to understand himself and trying to understand how to survive. And the reason, think about the seasons of the year with the swastika. We're trying to understand when to plant and when to harvest. So how do we keep track of that other than a calendar? We keep track through symbols. The symbols are what help us, especially something like, the zodiac or the swastika, or other types of symbols that can really help us understand cycles. And I know I'm going really far, but I'm just trying to help us understand just how important it is to recognize that your ignorance, our nescience, even because we come in contact with symbols, if you keep on digging enough, you'll come in contact with symbols that you never knew even existed because you are the discoverer of that symbol. Therefore, you're nescient of that. But once you become conscious of it, now you start to it's now you have a big responsibility to pull that out and to, learn more about it. But the point is if we remain ignorant of those symbols, or if we are ignorant, a lot of people, it's fear. It's not just ignorance, it's fear. But if we can look into the things that we fear the most, go search deeply into those symbols. Look very, go do all the research associated with those symbols. Then you will understand the language of symbolism. Then you will understand just how important symbols are. It's just like swimming. You don't just magically know how to swim when you jump into the water. You have to jump in and begin to swim, or figure out how to swim. But also, you probably want to maybe do a little bit of before you go in the deep end. You probably want to do a little research on how to swim, or ask people how to do it before you do it, so that way you can have some kind of technique or some kind of method that can keep you from drowning or looking like an idiot. But that is the point with symbolism. You have to dig deeply into those symbols by what they are associated with. Do the deep research, so that way you don't remain ignorant, because these symbols are not owned by anybody else. Like the swastika is not owned by the Nazis. Okay. These symbols are inherent in our being. Okay. These forms are especially these very, simple forms, like the circle or the square, the triangle, the swastika, the, just any, the star, the 5-pointed star. These symbols are extremely valuable because they are a pure form. They are what we're really trying to hone in and get back to, and understand how deeply interwoven they are into our being. But we can't understand what symbols are until we actually do the necessary research. So I'll go ahead and pass it off.
Nate, I put up that little image of some symbols. I don't know if that might help out. Go ahead, Logan.
Yeah, I'd love to riff on some of what Nate just said. I was laughing because as I was writing certain notes, Nate was almost saying them word for word what I was writing out.
Me too. I just stopped writing because Nate was on a tear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to reiterate, that's a point that I really wanted to emphasize, is that symbols are not man-made, they are man-discovered. They all originally were sourced from nature, most of which people that came way before us, and have been essentially nesting more and more refined understanding of what that symbol encapsulates within that, as a sigil of sorts, and then a talisman, which is it's just fractals of symbols packed into symbols basically. So the reason I wanted to really emphasize this point too is because I think for a lot of people that are even remotely aware of what's going on, when they think symbolism, first thing they probably think of is like, oh, they're mind controlling us with movies and the news and the colors that they flash and all this kind of stuff. And yes, that stuff is absolutely going on. But to me, it's important to keep first things first. If that's the first place your mind goes, you're still carrying the trauma of that systematic mind control and gaslighting and all that kind of stuff. That's where your brain is wired to. I think it's important. Like that's just a good indication of why we need to stand in our own power and understand where things came from. It didn't start as this perverted version of it that's being weaponized against us now. That's a very, it's like a sliver of it, but it's ancillary. what's most important is understanding those symbols for yourself, going on your own journey of discovery and exploration into what that all means, not only from the objective sciences that are there, because again, the symbols are coming from nature, not from man, and they have inherent meaning because the universe has inherent meaning. This is the crux of like the antithesis to postmodernism, that all values subjective and morality subject. No, there is inherent meaning and reason, right? The universe is rational and it wants to be understood. And that's so important, that I'm trying to emphasize here, that that is your spiritual journey. That is every individual. And it's not about what a very small percentage of psychopaths are doing with this. That is your birthright. And for you to understand and be empowered by. And when you are, those things hold a fraction of the power that they once did before on the unsuspecting or the unwitting mind that has no concept of what it's actually seeing. And so it's twofold. You enrich your own life through your study and the deepening of your knowledge of yourself and the universe and the operating system of natural law, but then you're also, by extension, you're beefing up your own defenses against psychological warfare. So, I thought it was kind of, I'm saying, you want to drop the baggage of thinking of symbolism as mind control, and understand that that is a perversion of something extremely important and sacred that we should all have a firm grasp on. That's the first thing. And and then I wanted to sort of muse on the title that Chris chose as symbology, because understanding the difference between symbolism and symbology, because symbolism is simply symbols and maybe their usage or something like that. Symbology is the science of understanding, and that's where the real power is. Symbolism in and of itself isn't useful at all, but when you step into the ology, the study of the gnosis, that's where you're going to really come into what that's there for, to begin with.
Very well said.
Yeah, and we got a little clip I'm going to play at the end. Wasn't sure how the stream would handle it, but Derek picked out a really cool little clip, and he talks about that difference between symbolism and symbology in that clip. So, and there's a little juicy little musical clip that Derek put together that I also have saved for the end of the show. But you know, I had something right on the tip of my tongue I wanted to say, but I lost it. So, whoever was next, were you about to say something, Nate? Oh, okay.
I mean, I can.
We were about to hear from Will or Chris, I think.
Derek and Jerry, did you guys?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Logan, you brought up a really great point because we see people kind of black pilled and like they're focused, solely on the negative stuff and like they're lying about everything and yada yada yada. And it's like we this is just like the conspiracy 101 stuff, and we got to get over that hump and heal some of that trauma, as you mentioned.
It's the
for sure.
trauma
And
response. That's what they're
yeah,
having.
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, great point. But yeah, we can't ignore the fact that they're embedding so many secrets in plain sight. Of course, yeah. So yeah, it's just a encouragement, with segments like this to help the educational faculties regarding the symbol illiterate population, and this is done on purpose because we're not really properly, introduced to the trivium and the quadrivium, and the quadrivium is more applicable to what we're talking about with symbols and geometry and all these things, right? And y'all brought up cymatics. I had that noted in regards to how like it's just picking up the frequencies of energy, right? And can energy even lie? In a sense, it can be manipulated or distorted, but energy doesn't really lie. We can see the patterns and recognize certain tendencies or that kind of stuff, and have we have all types of instruments for measuring these things, right? So it's interesting of just studying.
It's like Derek hermetic, right? Vibration. Nothing's ever still, right? I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, very good. But yeah, it's like we can get easily caught up in the whole like, because like the the dark satanic folks, they kind of want to have us, adopt their mind state, right? Got the mini me Satanists, whatever, and these folks are obviously obsessed with symbolism. They want to throw it in like a multitude of stuff into like one little thing, and they got the number 33 embedded in all these news stories and all this stuff, and yeah, so they got their calling cards or whatever, and they like to have their puppets, flash those, gestures and all that stuff. And folks really got to understand that, yeah, like all these celebrities and musicians throwing up whatever and wearing whatever, attire and all that stuff that, obviously, alludes to the hidden hands and all that stuff. People need to understand, like, they're just actors and they're puppets. They're not necessarily in the gang per se. They're not major players at all. A lot of them don't even know what they've been initiated into, and they're just being used as puppets. And they're just kind of prancing around as the people's champions, flashing, their dark occultic, inversions of these symbols and that kind of stuff. It doesn't mean that they're like Lady Gaga or Madonna. They are the Illuminati. Like no, like. Pfft, they're just being used to, parade around with those, symbols for us to acquiesce to, some of that bullshit. Anyways, does that make sense?
It does, and you're kind of taking that next step because Logan turned the corner. I remember what I wanted to say now. Logan did a good job of turning the corner and talking about the real crux of the issue. Talk about symbols. Crux is a very important symbol of the cross. But the crux of the situation here is that there are dark occultists, there are dark psychological programs that have been going on generationally, and there's symbols embedded in our stuff. This is like some matrix stuff, like, and a lot of folks out there just are not even close to making that awakening and realization to what the real situation is. They haven't put on those they live glasses, and that's the vast majority of all people around us, which creates a really weird situation because we have people living in sort of a non-reality. And it occurred to me that doing this work that we're doing, speaking out with our name, with our face, is energetically important. It's a symbolic gesture. That's why I was looking down because I wrote down that word. I was thinking about it. It's a symbolic gesture. This problem we're facing is worldwide. It's huge. Evil is rampant in our world. Most people are de facto Satanists, living in a weird state where they're accepting things that are evil as being okay when they're really not. And to come to this realization is a slap in the face of the universe to realize that, oh my gosh, I'm the only one that realizes this stuff. Out of hundreds and thousands of millions of people, most people don't recognize this truth. And these people here are some of the brave few people that are making that jump, that energetic decision to say to the universe, to say to people, to say it energetically and symbolically, I don't support evil. I don't support this occult, secretive raping of children and manipulative aspect where they're coercing people into paying taxes and supporting their evil deeds. And so if you're not energetically, symbolically speaking against that, then you are kind of getting sucked into it. And that's why this is so crucial and important, is that you need to be symbolically and energetically speaking against evil. And if you're not, you're with it. And that sucks to say, but it's the truth. Hand it off to whoever's next. I haven't been keeping track, obviously.
I think it's Jerry. If Jerry wants to tap in.
Yeah, good one. Yeah, I just want to say that Logan, you really, you know, brought some positive. What you said was very positive. How symbolism is meant to uplift us and to not look at it through a traumatic response. So that was great. Nate Caps's video's not on. I was gonna ask him what his shirt meant. I think it was a cube, but I'm just gonna keep listening, guys. Thanks for the gestures, Chris, and I'll pass it to Chris Nelson.
Oh, I think Will was gonna say something next. Go ahead, Will.
Sure. Yeah, man. You guys are bringing up some excellent points. When I think of symbolism, communication and comprehension come to mind, right? Because it really is communication with the divine, with nature, with yourself, with others, with reality. We're talking about symbols. This is the mental.
Universal language.
It's a universal language, absolutely. How do you communicate and interact with the unseen realm, with the metaphysical? You could do that through symbolism. And symbols speak to the mental realm. The energy, the emotion, and the actions come afterwards by your comprehension of the symbol, of the symbolism. For instance, how this can be used in a negative capacity. Somebody has a piece of paper, oh, you got to leave your house. It's got the seal of approval on it. Well, who gives a fuck? It's just a symbol. It has a meaning, but that's not an actual action or behavior behind it, right? It's just a claim. Now, so that's the communicative part. You're communing with a symbol that has meaning to it. So it can go many different levels. Obviously, it's very beneficial for the self. This is why every magical tradition has sigils and symbols encoded in that, because it's a way to communicate with your subconscious and unconscious mind, to communicate with nature and the unseen realm. So it has that potential vibration attached to it, depending on your comprehension. So it's a real powerful realm, and we need to utilize it in our own lives, see it in nature, in the natural world, see how it's being used against us, and that it's really going to increase our awareness, and it's needed. So,
Can I just add one thing too? Is this idea of symbolism and Satanism. I want to explain what that really means because of how it's being used. This is just another form of relativism, and is ultimately the satanic mindset of man positioning himself as God. Is that we're gonna take these symbols that are divine, part of creation, and distort them into our own meaning. So they're twisting them into their own relativistic ideals and then foisting that onto people through subversive communication, through the subconscious mind. So it's basically, it's the satanic mindset of we decide what symbolism is and we'll decide that for you, and then you're just going to swallow that, and that'll be your only conception of what this stuff even means. So ultimately because, and I've said this to Will a lot in our private conversations, is that as I've deeper and deeper studied into mind control, one thing has been so clear, is that ultimately the root of all mind control is about separating us from nature. And this is one of the ultimate ways to do that, because again, it's imposing their concept of relativism over the true natural meanings of what these symbols can be. So it's like another version of the Matrix. Instead of seeing the symbols in their pure forms, they're now distorted, and we can only project that through what they have kind of put in place for us. And essentially symbols can be man-made, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that, right? When you create a new business and you make a logo, you just created a symbol that is almost like an egregore, right? You're imbuing psychic energy into that, and it becomes almost like a living energetic entity. And that's neither bad or good. It depends on how it's used. But when it comes to pure forms and the primordial inherent symbols, the originals of nature, they need to be preserved and left the hell alone. And that's where it gets really dangerous, is where they're distorting the things like the star, the circle dot, those things that are
cross.
They need to be really, really preserved in their pure forms and understood as such.
The archetypes.
Yeah.
Yes.
overlays and
That's
shit.
the exoteric and the esoteric, right? When you say Satanism, the exoteric people think of the devil. A better symbol for Satanism would be like the hypercube, which probably many people have never even heard of or even know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
They've heard Tesseract, but only in Marvel movies.
The light ray cube, the 4D light ray cube. I've done quite a bit of work on that. If someone wants to check out the And Evil series on andevil.life. But yeah, that's an important concept. And the square itself, I find to be very particularly interesting symbol because being a carpenter all my life, I've come to recognize that when you look out in nature, nature doesn't produce right angles. In fact, it's extremely rare to see any kind of right angle in
Very, very
nature.
rare.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty easy to build something, the most basic types of structures, using a square. Your average doorway is two pillars and then some sort of large header across the top. And that's simple. It's an easy way to build, and it separates us from nature in a weird way when you think about it. The square, we build a house, right? But if a builder or artisan wants to make something of circular design, it can be actually quite stronger, but it's also much more difficult to build
An
and
arc.
takes a lot more skill and knowledge and
Mm-hmm.
mathematical knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So it's weird how that is so hermetically congruent with the real aspect of the way we describe the metaphor of the square and the circle. One is very natural and whole, and then the other one has these right corners that are parallel. And
I also like to think about the practicality because the square and the cube are masculine, which is about order, right? And so it's a lot easier to have everything shaped like a cube that you can arrange like the furniture in your room. Everything, the parallel lines all line up nice and flush, and it's nice and tidy and orderly. It's a lot harder to do that with round shapes because
Yeah.
nothing really fits together. It's all kind of like there's this empty space, and that left brain wants to kind of fill that.
I want to hear from Chris. You got something going on in that wonderful mind of yours there, Chris Nelson.
Yeah, I can bring in some, I guess you could say contrarian, oppositional, countering, counterbalancing perspective, I guess, to some things that have been said. Um, so yeah, like symbols, some of them, some things, shapes do exist inherently in nature, and we can discover meaning relative to it, but I think it's more so most of the symbols that we're the ones attributing meaning to it. So, for example, if you take a square and it's not that, you know, right angles don't exist in nature. Um, they do, it might be rare, but I think it's graphite. Those are cube structures that are formed in nature. That's one place where there's right angles and even the cube. And also, if you're familiar with R. Buckminster Fuller, he was a polymath, and he had a cosmology of everything is based on Platonic solids, so the cube, the tetrahedron, the dodecahedron. I forget the other shapes, but there was five Platonic solids. So it's an
And
interesting
they,
thing
they
to
all
look
nestle
into.
within one another as well, perfectly. All the platonic solids. Have you ever seen that, Chris?
Yeah, well, I think isn't that his the shape that he invented? He created a certain one that didn't exist before, and he I forget what he called
Oh,
it,
where he's famous, where he
the
shows him
Fulleron
with
or
that
something.
expanding ball.
I forget. It's been a while since I read his material, but it's just something related to like the concept of shapes or symbols being inherent to nature, and some of them can be, but a lot of the things, certainly in the human created world, a lot of it is us that creates them. So like you could say that there's certain shapes that have more of a pure meaning, but all of these things, like the circle dot itself, isn't in nature. We draw it, right? So we draw a circle and we draw a smaller circle in the meaning and in the middle, and we can attribute by correspondence and metaphor and simile and analogy. We can convey a certain shape and make it related to another concept, like in mind, like Will was saying, and that's what the definition of symbology and symbolism. It's not that symbology is the only one that's valid to look into, or symbolism has no meaning. Is that symbology is literally like the study or interpretation of symbols or symbolism, or the use of symbols, and symbolism is like a literary device or other imagery where you use symbols to represent something beyond a literal meaning. So in the tarot, that's what all the tarot is made up, right? So I mentioned the magician card. You have the sword, you have the chalice. Well, the sword by itself is just a sword, but we can attribute additional meaning to it. We can correspond it to other things through analogy and metaphor and allegory and correspondence. The chalice representing the feminine, but a chalice is just a chalice. A V is just a V. A triangle is just a triangle in itself as a shape. But then we can discover through the correspondence that how this shape relates to other concepts of the imaginal or mental realm, and we can gain greater understanding about this inner reality that we have, that things aren't expressed explicitly in themselves, right? So that's why one of the other definitions of symbolism is learn the art or practice of using symbols to express the invisible or intangible by means of visible or sensuous representations. So again, the sword or the chalice, well, that's the visible thing, and you can touch certain things, like Leslie mentioned in chat. Even for a blind person, there's braille, so you can have shapes on bumps on a page, and then we attribute you can imbue meaning in those bumps, in a certain organization, a certain constructed ordering of those bumps that give a certain meaning, and then people can agree on that, and then they can communicate by way of that agreement of what those symbols mean by that organization and that structure, what it's constructed to mean. Um, so there's like the symbology is when you get more deeper into it, but everything around us is the symbols and the symbolism. And when you go deeper into it, that's when you get into the symbology. And yeah, I guess that's what I wanted to bring up, just the all other perspective of how a lot of it is like even the letter E, like I mentioned that before, any alphabet or any number, it's just a line, a one or a two. You could look at it as on the digital clock. Well, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, or it's one line and then two lines, like a Z, but it's a two. Um, the E is just a line and then part of a circle, but not a full circle. So like you could look at that's one shape of a line, and then it's part of a circle. So it's curves and a line together, and we mix all these together, and then we attribute meaning to them, and we attribute vocalization patterns. And yeah, one thing I wanted to mention also related to the sound and vibration, how it does have form, because it scientifically, even when you talk about frequency, which is what a vibration is, they call it a wave form. So even in the terminology for it, it has the word form in it. So even though we don't think of it as having form, it's specifically, even in the scientific terminology, it's a wave form, because the frequency is like a wave.
So
So
as soon as you record it, there's a visual
yeah,
representation, like on a DAW or something like that.
yeah,
You call it the
and
waveform. Yep.
yeah. So yeah, just this aspect of how all these, you can say like a certain shape or a form is inherent in nature, but a lot of it is us who correspond it, like one of the definitions, by trying to understand things that are intangible and invisible, that like such as ideas, as Will mentioned, in the mental realm, and how we can try to understand those things that are pretty much internal or not, that are metaphysical, by way of things that are physical. For example, like I keep mentioning, the tarot is an excellent demonstration of that. And yeah, so I guess those are the points I wanted to bring up.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, and you're definitely right. There are squares in nature, and the rectangle, the square can be found, um, you know, in nature. But so I think that is important to point out. If my main point with that, a rectangular thing, is that symbolically, generally man-made things, we tend to make more squarish things because it's simpler, and a square kind of represents and connotes that simpler way to structure things. And a lot of times, the way we structure things in society to organize our minds or organize a piece of paper or whatever is we put things into categories, or we fractionalize things. We break them into smaller bits as a way to understand, as a way to filter things. But that's been done to an entire population of people around the world, using secret symbols, and they don't realize that's happening. People have been segregated, divided, processed. And I think of the way people have congregated and created communities all through history. That's been breaking apart. And that's been done in many ways, and in many sneaky ways, to fractionalize people and put us all on different places and not connected to our heritage and not connected to other people to understand what we're talking about. And that's kind of why I wanted to bring back this idea of the Tower of Babel and the modern versions of communication. We have more opportunities to communicate and technology to communicate than ever in history, and yet it's harder than ever to have an honest conversation or disagreement with another human being, because we're all so fractionalized and split up and speaking from so many different perspectives, and there's very little common ground.
There's
And
one
so
last thing that I wanted to
that
bring up
leaves
was
a
just
fucked up scenario.
what you were mentioning is technology. That's something I forgot. Is all of this is technology. As Passio says, there's two ways to create change. One is philosophy, and the other is technology. All these, the communication, the language, everything we create, all these, the symbols and the interpretations we have, they're a form of technology. So as Logan was explaining, it's not symbols or Satanism or whatever. It's only for mind control. No, these are technologies that we create because we imbue them with meaning, and
with
they can be used
philosophy.
for, yeah, they can be used for good, or they can be used for evil. It's in the one who wields it and how they wield it, for which path they align with, the left hand path or the right hand path. That's it.
Absolutely. The dual edged sword. Um, Nate, did you get your audio working again? Are you back with us?
I believe so. Do I sound different?
Yeah, it's coming in good. I was noticing your lighting's like perfect right now. You got like that soft setting sunlight coming in through the window. So
Yeah, the gremlins got me again. The tech gremlins. I really like what you were saying, Chris, about letters in particular, because letters, again, like I was saying earlier, it is a think about this too. Always pay attention to. I'm going to make my point here in a second, but just pay attention to the phonetics when you listen to words, because think about the fact that um, a letter is also phonetically a letter, like something you send in the mail, and what you're sending in the mail has something in the envelope, right? So the letter is in the envelope, but the point is to think of, when you're sending a letter out, you're sending it out as a form of communication, right? A long distance communication. And that is, it's analogous to a symbol. A symbol is carrying, as you become conscious, the symbol is carrying that information, waiting for you to bring the right knowledge to that information, or to that letter, to that symbol. Um, all the letters of the alphabet, a lot of people don't know this, they are all Masonic. They're all Masonic symbols. And as you keep bringing knowledge to each one of those symbols, to each one of those letters, you will be able to pull so much information that will really reveal so much more to you, and just how far back those symbols go, especially in the English type of letters or Latin. You know, we have to understand that each letter has a numerical value in the alphabet. So if we pay attention to the numerical value of the alphabet, um, we will be able to see the deeper connection and see why numbers like, you know, the first 9 letters of the alphabet are all about the um, that which is you know, more simple, because 9, you know, 1 through 9, or even 0 through 9, but 1 through 9 in this case is about understanding pure form. Because as you go into the double digits, it starts to lose its pure form. So, for instance, if you look at, you know, the letter C, that's number 3, and we all know 3 is a very spiritual number, you know, especially when you think of the Holy Trinity or the Trivium. 7 is another very spiritually well known number, and that's associated with the G, the capital letter G. And so when you start to see what that really entails, you have, for instance, the G symbol is um, a combination. There's another word I was trying to think of, but it's a combination of C and 7. So there's a reason for that, because as you start to really dive, and I know this is like very advanced what I'm saying, but as you get, you know, as you dive deeper into that letter G, you're going to realize just how significant it is to understand how letters are developed, how symbols are developed, and why they're in the order that they're in. You know, there's no coincidence for any of this. You know, it's all structured for a reason. And there's so much to be said about it. But, you know, the point is if you can start to see how these numbers and letters connect, and even overlay. You know, think about this. I want to say this real quick, and then I'll hand it off. But I'm trying to cram so much in just a short amount of time. But the point is, if you really want to understand how to see symbols and form, think of it as if you were to take a transparent piece of paper, a tracing paper, and you were to trace out a symbol, and then you take that paper and then you start to try to see where it fits with other shapes or forms that look alike. You overlay the tracing paper to see where it fits. So if you see the letter D, for instance, the capital letter D, and you look at a picture of overhead view of a human brain with 2 hemispheres, well, then you put that capital letter D, overlay that paper onto um, that picture of the overhead view of the 2 hemispheres, and you see that, well, one of the hemispheres is covered in that capital letter D. Okay, and obviously it's abstract. The capital letter D is an abstract form of the human brain. Obviously, it doesn't look just like the right hemisphere of the human brain. It doesn't have all the mushy gooey slime to it. But the point is that you see the similar shape, right? Now, if you can take that same idea and without the paper and just, have that same concept in your mind, and you can use that wherever you go. out in the world and overlay the symbols, the most simple symbols, overlay them on certain things. And that can really help you develop your symbolic mind. So I will go ahead and pass it off. So hopefully that made sense.
Um, real quick, Nate, great points. Jerry had asked earlier about the symbol that was on your shirt. And I know that symbol can be talked about until the end of time, but for someone who wasn't aware of it, can you just, like kind of sum it up?
Yeah. I actually meant to. I briefly heard that was Jerry, right? That said that.
Yeah.
Um, um, yeah. So this symbol, this actually goes with what Chris was saying earlier about this square, which is building with the square, and that's one of the most beautiful things that anybody could ever awaken to, because um, this is the 3-4-5 ratio. This is akin that well this is Euclid's 47th proposition symbol. Okay. Or you could say this is Pythagorean theorem, the 3-4-5 ratio. And basically, what it is in a nutshell is it is all about the um, the eschatology. It's about the study of final things. It's about the triune brain, or the Holy Trinity. Okay, so I'm going really really extreme with it, but just so you understand, 3-4-5, and the three, which I just talked about being spiritual. You have the father, the mother, and the child. Okay, so this is the spiritual rebirth. Okay, now I'm taking you way back to Egypt to explain that, but this symbol is something. This was discovered during Neoplatonism, but the point is to understand that the work, or the amount of information that is stored within this symbol is so much deeper. It's so much deeper than Neoplatonism. It is a very ancient symbol, especially when you understand this 3-4-5 ratio through the what's called the Egyptian string trick, which is how they were able to find a right angle by having 12 knots of a string. And so if you were to take a 12 knots of a string, equal distant between each knot of the string, and you were to basically put two pegs down, north and south, and wrap that string around to where you have three uh, three knots, or three spaces between the knots going from south to north. If you pulled it to the west, that's the important part. If you pull the two ends of the string to the west, you will find the right angle triangle. And this is a very beautiful moral lesson that you can learn, especially regarding Ma'at, which means that which is straight, because it's about being straight in your being correct, being just in your actions, in your behavior. And
We
there's
can
some. I know I'm going too
we can
far, but
also Nate, go super practical on that. I'm going to come back to my carpenter thing. We use 3-4-5, the very common. Like, first thing I'm going to do is lay out where I'm going to build something. Is I'm going to get out some strings and stakes, and I'm going to pound them in the ground, and I'm going to say, "Hey, Will, can you run down that one?" And I'm going to put my tape measure out 3 feet, and then we're going to make a mark, and then we're going to send the tape measure 4 feet in the other direction. We're going to make a mark, and then we're going to balance it, and we're going to make sure it's exactly 5 feet between those marks. And if it's not, we're going to move our stakes and our strings a little bit until it is. And it's
Right.
funny because that process you do over and over in the building process. With all the technology we have, we're still out there doing basically what you're calling the Egyptian string trick in modern day building. It's that essential and crucial to building to get things square, because if you don't, if your foundation's out or your strings were off in the beginning, everything you build from there on is going to get more and more worse. It's going to go from being an eighth of an inch out to a quarter inch out to 3 inches out. And so it's super real and practical in the real world too. And it is a very symbolic of the real situation where we all have to keep checking ourselves.
Right.
We have to keep checking ourselves. And sometimes we need a friend to help hold the other end of the tape and help measure, see if we're measuring up to what we're saying and that we're being right in ourselves. Right.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's, again, that's all very symbolic and real of our spiritual life too. And very
Straight up.
practical.
Very
Yeah,
well
straight
said.
up. Now tell me.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to bring up the westing part as well. But Mayat, yeah, keep it level, balanced, harmonious. Yeah. You got that natural love.
Scales.
Another very important part of 345 is trivium, quadrivium, and five senses. That's one of the most practical things that people can learn on how to apply the 345 in their lives.
Oh yeah, good point, Chris. Your tree
Absolutely.
is like breathing behind you. I don't know if you got a fan going, but that's beautiful. If you did
No,
that.
that's the cat. That's why I'm like leaning over to pet her.
You gotta get her doing
She's
that every time.
like
That's
walking
awesome. It
around.
looks like your tree is just like glowing and growing.
If anyone wants to dive deeper into the symbol that Nate Cap is talking about, Douglas Martin did a fantastic presentation called "The Trivium and the Trinity," and he presented it during Funnel 3. So just wanted to shed some light if people wanted to dive deeper, because Douglas Martin's work is phenomenal. So yeah, people can always check that out.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
this particular episode is just the mind can opener number one. We're going to keep going with this topic of symbology, I would say, for the next month or so. We have an awesome One Great Work Warriors episode coming up next week. That's going to be called Talking Shit Comms. And we're going to talk some shit about those shit comms. And I'm sure some of them have hidden symbology in them. But after that, I'm going to come back to this topic. I'm going to do some kind of more like one-on-one focused talks and really try to. There's a lot here with symbology. We're just barely scratching the surface and opening this topic. And I really appreciate some of you hard-hitting experts coming tonight and helping me get started with this topic. So I think we'll close it up. Any last thoughts? Anybody wants to share, feel free. And then I got some cool little clips I'll play that Derek contributed to run the show out. So, yeah.
I'll jump in with a closing statement. I think one of the most powerful symbols to understand is yourself. You are a symbol for life, divinity, potentiality, and what you do in reality and what you do matters. And you are discovering and creating the meaning of the symbol, which is you. So that's something to take into consideration. Maybe that's why Prince just went with the symbol.
Ah.
So
He
Oh,
made
yeah.
his print. He made his prints on the world, huh?
His
How are
leopard print.
you representing yourself?
Yeah,
Yeah,
are we
man.
putting our
That's a good
mage
one.
in the image of ourselves? A proper image, with using that imagination, that imagination, and someone else had a good play on words of just in image nation, that kind of stuff. So, yeah,
That's why the pentagram is one of the most powerful and ancient symbols. It's also the Pythagorean isosceles triangle triplicate, which is the three, the triangle, right? The most stable geometrical shape, the three aspects of consciousness. And it's the molecule of water, which is the essence of life. And when you apply the human being on top of the upright star, the pentagram, then you get man in its full potential, head pointing towards the heavens to divinity, with the root chakra towards the ground. And this is also why it is inverted for
Yeah.
that just that inversion of nature, truth, and reality, where the head, the mind, is pointed towards the underground. So, it's
Mm.
you could spend a lifetime on understanding meanings, and I've always said you can have a full blown awakening and awareness of what's going on in the world by defining words, getting to origin and etymology, and how and which words are used today, and symbols.
Mm.
100%.
Yeah, you could also look at the pentagram as as Osiris as well, because it's the material is below. You want your feet on the ground, but your spirit is raised, and that's what the Osiris myth is all about: is raising up, elevating into the heavens. Um,
Yeah, man.
I would say too, just as a my own sort of parting words on this topic, this is a vast. I mean, it's so unfathomably vast as a body of work to study into. It's a lifetime thing. So anyone that's interested, or whether you're starting out or you're piqued your interest from this conversation, or you're a little bit further along, that would be my one advice as somebody that's been studying this for, I mean, 15 years at least. um, is it's pace yourself. It's a very long thing, and you're not going to get it right away. And even I don't get it. You know what I'm saying? It's an ever becoming process of refining and going deeper, and pulling from eclectic sources and bringing them into that your own sort of tapestry, because that's what it's all about. Is that the symbols come from everywhere. They're sourced from every possible angle, and so it is a tapestry out there, and then you're bringing that in and weaving your own tapestry of understanding and gnosis. So make sure you're looking at many different places. Like you can go to a Jordan Maxwell or a Michael Tsarion. Those are excellent sources, but you're not going to get everything just from going to one or two spots. You got to be as eclectic as possible. That's where you're really going to get the most like holistic and well-rounded understanding.
What was the episode where you and Nate did such a good, thorough conversation with Osiris and all? I finally made it all the way through. I loved that talk.
Yeah.
What was the name of it?
Yeah, we did. It's called The Myth of Osiris, and we also did another episode called Green Language, which I think those go really well together. And that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's another thing too, is symbolism isn't just about a star and an axe and a circle dot. There's many sort of schools. It's almost like magic, and then there's these different sort of specializations. So language and letters, but the spoken word, in green language, that's a big part of it as well. And you've got to have all the pieces of a broad spectrum. It's an ecology, just like anything natural law based. That's what nature is all about, is an ecosystem of interconnecting parts. So you can't get too compartmentalized on that.
Yeah, Nate
Great
Cap's
point.
circle dot presentation is top notch, yo. Bravo. Hats off to
Absolutely.
Yeah.
you.
And matter of fact, when
Yeah,
his
that's Oculus.
presentation plays on my 24/7 live stream, it's hard for me to focus on what I'm doing because I'm constantly, looking over there and learning from that. So it's such an honor to, to be able to come on here and be among y'all because we are in a war. And I want to thank all of y'all, because I've learned so much from y'all. And like I say, not only with, Nate Cap's work, a lot of times when y'all's a presentation is playing, I'm always focused on that. And Logan, I would love to get some of your work uploaded onto the 24/7 live stream because you bring so much to the conversation on natural law, on symbolism, on paganism, on on animism too. So hell, would love to get some of your videos uploaded. But I want to thank all of y'all because I've learned so much from y'all. So
Thank you, man.
Likewise, Brandon.
Yeah,
You too, man. Hey,
absolutely.
what's the channel that viewers can go watch your 24/7 player?
Right now, I'm on Twitch, and I just started it on Rumble. You can go into the One Great Work network, and you can click on both links, or you can just type in my name, Brandon Spencer 00 on Twitch, and on Rumble, it's just Brandon Spencer. And right now on Rumble, it seems to be getting a lot more views, but I want to kind of target those platforms because there's a lot of, wrong, distorted thoughts as far as people who claim to want freedom. And those are the platforms that I want to target. So I plan on, possibly getting onto a third and fourth, platform to run a 24/7 live stream because I want to get the knowledge out there. Because if the knowledge is not out there, people are not going to be able to even learn. And it's also too, it's a respect to all the other content creators because I understand the sacrifice and the time that comes along, with doing this kind of work. So I will also, I'm honoring y'all's work too because it's not just my work, it's y'all's work too that's playing on a 24/7 live stream. So much respect to y'all. And there's still many content creators that I would love to reach out to. It's just a process because I have to download all of those videos and get them uploaded. And then, hell, I'm just one person, so it is taking time. But there's plenty of other content creators who are on the network and possibly not even on the network who I would like to reach out to. So it's just a sign of respect to y'all because I've learned from y'all. So thank you. Yeah, but on Twitch and Rumble.
Thank you,
Excellent.
man.
Appreciate that, Brandon. Really do. Um, I I love being around people like you because I understand that you care. You're here. And we're having this conversation for a reason. It's because we really are sitting at the round table and we're passing on these ideas. We're putting everything on the table together, and it's amazing to see how many of you have how much you guys have grown. Just watching you guys grow, and you're just as much of an inspiration to me as I seem to be for you, and I'm really thankful that my work is reaching you guys, and I appreciate you letting me know um, that. Um, and so I really appreciate everything. I have a lot of gratitude towards these meetings and um, towards everybody who really gives a shit about things that are very much overlooked, and it is really what's going to bring us back to nature. That's the thing that people have to remember, is that symbolism is really what brings us back to source. And that's because geometry is the ultimate, especially sacred geometry is the ultimate uh, language, universal language that is that we can communicate with nature or the creator. And one thing I just want to leave everybody with that's listening is that um, if you can just remember or even write down the most simple way to remember what symbolism means is always just, I mean, because there's quite a few really important definitions of what symbolism means, um, but to compare one thing with another, that has been one of, so it's like if you can just remember to compare one thing with another is a hub. It's a central point that you bring information to, bring symbolism, compare and contrast, definitions, compare and contrast. If you can always remember, compare one thing with another, that will always help you with, um, centralizing yourself with the information as a place where you are truly learning and truly building upon different types of information that comes from that contrast or comes from the associations. So yeah, that's my piece, and I really thank you guys again. I'm really looking forward to doing another one of these, and hopefully I'll be able to be a little bit more simplified in my explanations. It's difficult in these dynamics to really try to open this stuff up. So anyway, thanks
Yeah.
again.
Thanks,
Really
Nate.
appreciate it, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for showing up. And this was sort of a last minute invite to all of you. So I really appreciate just being willing to just jump on and kind of This live format, it does seem like it gets a little bit more attention out there. So I think it's important that we learn to do that. But I want to keep going on this topic, and we're going to have some more focused discussions. Eventually, we're going to get Brandon Martin in here, and I wanted to mention his new series out on seedtruth.com, Beyond the Forbidden Veil. It's really a series on the occult, and the first episode's on initiation. You guys should check that out. Spend some time at the Wizard Factory. Spend some time on willkeller.com, evolveconsciousness.org, cubbyhole.com. There's so much out there. Brandon Spencer's live stream, which I just put the links in the chat. Awaken Your Mind YouTube channel. It just goes on and on. I appreciate these warriors out here doing this work and symbolically destroying evil. And that's what we all need to be doing. So take the ball, listeners, and run with it. We're going to go ahead and cut out here, and I'm going to play for you guys some awesome clips provided by the wonderful Derek Bartolocelli. Appreciate everybody's presence and words tonight and symbols. Thank you.
Appreciate you all. Thanks.
So you think they came for the fag man, huh? And what do you base this upon?
He was the only one done right. Double tap, back of the head.
And the pennies?
New hitman wants to leave his mark.
That's a possibility. Now, you Irish cops are perking up. That's two sound theories in one day, neither of which deal with abnormally sized men. Kinda makes me feel like river dancing. Another possibility is they were placed there with religious intent.
Okay, some cultures still put pennies in the eyes of the dead, or silver.
The Italians, the Greeks.
Sicilians.
So, what's the symbology there?
Symbology? Now that Duffy has relinquished his King Bonehead crown, I see we have an heir to the throne. I'm sure the word you were looking for was symbolism. What is the symbolism there? Let me explain it to you. In Greek and Roman mythology, when you died, you'd have to pay the toll to Charon, the boatman who ferried you across to the gates of judgment. This made sure the dead came to atone for what they did during their lives, the Pictrodala Papaskalius.
Jesus, you're the first one that ever got that.
Yeah, well, I'm an expert in nameology.
The left eye, it symbolizes external vision. The right eye, it symbolizes internal blindness. With this introduction, we understand now that when we're dealing with the subject of the Antichrist, there is a lot of symbolism involved in it. Religious symbolism, which needs to be interpreted.
Yeah. Take a look around you as you make your rounds. This symbolism embedded in every block in town. You got your Starbucks with the siren straight from Greek mythology. As a woman on the logo, lure you in, that's a psychology. The Chrysler wing rock, the Dodge Ram depicting Lucifer, the shell, gasoline clams, the sun. Folks are used to the 3s and 13s. Now everywhere you looking at, we overlooking the facts of the stats of what you cooking, Jack. The pharmaceutical giants have esoteric emblems as the symbols make their way inside my well-protected temple. I'm aware of the paganism up on all the packages, druidic little elves and no trees on my placards and a pyramid right up on the back on all Doritos. The same check on your Nikes, on your Newports and Speedos. What's it all about? Blatantly displayed, indeed they mocking us. Corral us in the pen like good sheep. How they flocking us?
It's all sacred symbolism.
You copy this?
It's all sacred symbolism.
The many remain the slave class.
It's all sacred symbolism.
You copy this?
It's all sacred symbolism.
Yeah,
We are the resistance.
Just look at Target with its alchemical symbol for gold, and Walmart with their sun symbol done so. To the populace and living folk who live inside the radius, they live amongst us underneath the human skin. The aliens, a sense of paranoia, stay looking, it's all over. Lucky Charms are wicked and sick with trick clovers. Look at CBS, the logo, the eye is all seeing. For the time being, only the few are foreseeing what the plan's about. Take another sip right out that monster can. That's really numeral for number 6. It's the fall of man, reverse it up, beat the double R. Temple royalty, my kin throwing tats on their skin. There's been loyalty, machete swing. I'm reachable and active like computer pings. I'll be the first one to show you around if you are new to things. All it really takes to decide these life parasites is people should open their eyes like spy satellites. High society die from anxiety. The improprieties of the diocese cross varieties. They laugh behind our backs at this whack. We lack images, consecrated etchings and stones surround villages.
The end of the world, actually the end of humanity. The sheep sleep wide awake, prone to live by insanity. I have Lucifer on the back of the dollar bill, saying I direct CBS and AOL, Trilateral National Broadcasting System, MK Ultra, distorting your vision. Hey yo, they telling lies to your vision. Sacred symbolism is everywhere, all through Capitol Hill, especially from a bird's eye view. This is nothing new. Since day one, we have been trying to warn you and bomb your mentals with the truth. Barcodes on your butts, cameras on every street corner, photo identification, facial recognition software, accurate like a cop's Glock, point blank to your mother's wig. 4:45 a.m. government agents ransacking your crib, tying up your kids. Martial law concentration camps are now in the prison of your own mind. Your soul gets sucked dry, you die, but you're still alive. The majority of all of you think you're living it up, but truthfully, you're just living a lie. False idols you worship, trapped within your own worthless flesh, selfish and hellish ways. It's all sacred symbolism.
You copy this.
It's all sacred symbolism.
The few lead the many remain the slave class.
It's all sacred symbolism.
You copy this.
It's all sacred symbolism. We are the resistance.
The symbols saying more than what they seeming to say, and subconsciously communicating to your DNA. Street lights, guns, skyscraper shaped phallically, the male fallacy, undoing the earth balancing. And the owl perched on the dollar is significant. The owl is 13 and M in the Egyptian glyphs. When symbolic triggers hit, they cause conniption fits. The letter A comes from the ox. It's not bull script symbolic. Bull Maryland, Chicago, Mo Schlitz. Western medicine practice still using this. Tahuti Caduceus, right of Asclepius, intertwined, serpent spiral like nerves around the spine. RX pharmaceutical sign of Peru's eye. Geico reptilian, caveman, Neanderthal, aside show civilians believing propaganda mall. Supply the demand that began when you were programmed all wired to react when you see certain images. So gargoyles guard businesses with serpent visages. The mission is to flood them with subliminal messages until it's too overwhelming and no one will question it.
It's all sacred symbolism.
You copy this.
It's all sacred symbolism.
The few lead the many remain the slave class.
It's all sacred symbolism.
You copy this.
It's all sacred symbolism. We are the resistance. Resistance.
The Western world in general and America is what I call symbol illiterate. What you're going to see tonight is a small window into a concept that I've taught for years, taught children especially, and it's just symbol literacy, which is learning about how the universal creator or the universal presence, the universal intelligence speaks to us daily. It speaks in symbols, not words.